Hey everybody, don't forget to follow us on Instagram and www.portalvillepodcast.com.
Oh, welcome to Tales from the Rift. My name is Jen. I play the news reporter August Potts on the scripted Portalville podcast.
And I'm John. I write and produce. I created the Portalville podcast for Cosmic Horror Monthly magazine.
So right now, we are lost in the woods of Burkittsville, as John decided to kick our map into the goddamn river.
It wasn't doing us any good, and I am tired of filming rocks.
Well, we have a special guest coming through the rift who can help us to safety, hopefully. He is a famed writer, director, and producer involved in many projects for film and TV, including Lovely Molly, VHS2, Lucifer, American Horror Stories, Supernatural, 50 States of Fright, the list goes on, and the Blair Witch franchise, Mr. Eduardo Sanchez. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming out and letting us do this interview. It's like the day before Thanksgiving. We do really appreciate it. We know how
it was good. I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah.
So let's start off by getting to know you a bit. What inspired you to get into filmmaking, particularly horror?
What got me into filmmaking was, Star Wars. I was like 10 years old when Star Wars came out, or 9 or 10. So it was like this, huge event. I just kind of, it made me kind of really curious about how they made movies, especially like, space movies with special effects and all that stuff. And also my dad, really loves going to the movies. And he'll watch any kind of movie. So my dad would take me when I was young. So I think he kind of helped me kind of appreciate the cinema and stuff like that. And then horror, I love all genres. Horror was not really my favorite genre. I don't really like scary movies. Like, I don't like to be scared. I like the films themselves. I think there's like really great filmmaking being done, or had been done, and in horror, like there's just really classic movies, but I just don't like being scared. And so I kind of shied away from horror films, except the ones that my friends would take me to, or like I saw The Exorcist when I was really little, and it really scared me, and Amityville Horror, all those classic movies. But then in film school, Dan Myrick, my partner, and I, we were just kind of came up with this idea for Blair Witch, and it happened to be a horror movie. And so that kind of, it was like the not the easiest, but it was like the most low budget idea we had. We were like, oh, let's just do this. But both Dan and I like never considered ourselves, horror filmmakers. And then, so then Blair Witch comes out, and, now I'm like a horror filmmaker all of a sudden. And I've learned, it took me a while to kind of learn to appreciate it, really. And learn, and, I'm always learning as a filmmaker. But, I really love the genre now, because it's a great genre to be, if you're going to be stuck in a genre, it's great to be stuck in a horror, because there's so many different flavors to horror. It has all these little subgenres, so you can be really serious, you can be goofy, you can be action, it can be monster movies. There's so many different kinds of films in the horror genre. So it does let you kind of flex your muscles and be kind of a little, to do different things, which I love about the genre. And so here I am,
Yeah, and it's much cheaper than Star Wars. Did you like the newer ones that came out?
It's a little cheaper than Star Wars for sure. I like them. Yeah. I didn't, I had mixed feelings about them, but I love, I love anything Star Wars, as you can see.
Yeah, you got an ATST back there, man.
Yeah, yeah. And I had, so I really did love the movies, because I think that there's such works of art, you know what I mean? Like, it's the best cinematographers and the best, art directors and the special effects, and there's always breaking new ground and things. And, so I love certain parts of them, and I did dislike, a lot of it. But, for me, they're still Star Wars movies, and, I enjoyed them.
Yeah, well, speaking of you getting into horror, like, I really want to revisit Blair Witch. You can tell.
Right, right, right.
Well, I'm not trying to suck up. I am sucking up, but it's one of my favorite scary movies of all time. That's
Cool.
like The Ring. Like it really affected me. Like I don't want to go camping. She makes me go camping, and that was like one of my fears. Like going in the ocean from Jaws,
Yeah.
going in and hiking and camping. Blair Witch affected me. But let's hear about like how you guys made the film, like your process. It sounds like it was kind of like a mad science experiment almost, the way you did it.
Yeah, it was a total experimental film. I mean, it was, we had no money, and and the whole idea of the movie was that, it's supposed to be raw footage, of this, film project that, went awry. And so realism was kind of like the main, like the prime objective was like, everything has to look real. Like there can't be any thing in the movie that makes it look like it's lit, or it's any kind of Hollywood tricks. And that's why we decided to not do a soundtrack. There's no music, and everything's pretty much handheld, and it's just this making a video into hell. Whether it's the acting or the cinematography or the production design, everything was based on this thing of like not giving it away, and not making it like, we wanted the people to sit down. And this was early on. We were like, we were hoping for like a video release, like that was the goal. This is like mid 90s. So it was just like, maybe a DVD release would be cool. So everything was kind of based on this idea of like making it real. So we cast these actors that felt real, and we didn't write any dialogue. We just kind of came up with this script that was kind of like an outline, a very detailed outline. So everything was based on that prime, objective. So it was like, really experimental. And we just basically sent the actors off into the woods, and we built like this 24-hour playground around them. And my producer, Greg Hale, our producer, Greg Hale, he had gone through some military training, special forces training, and they had done these scenarios where they sent the soldiers out into the woods with, I think, just a compass, and they had to survive. And then they got picked up by like these, Russian guys, speaking Russian, like, simulating like being caught by Russians and taken to a camp. I mean, really hardcore. And he was like, that would be cool to, not torture the actors, but do a little scenario where they're actually out there, they sleep out there. And Dan and I were like, I mean, we always thought of like that we were going to leave the actors for hours at a time, because we did want it to be this very natural looking. We didn't want to be like, all right, action and cut. It wasn't that kind of movie. But we never thought of like leaving the actors out there at night. You know what I mean? So Greg kind of came up with all the logistical kind of, planning for that aspect of it. And Dan and I were like, okay, how do you direct actors, without actually talking to them? So we came up with a system of giving them notes, several times a day. But everybody, I mean, everybody in the crew is just basically, trying to just continuing this 24-hour kind of staged play that we were kind of building around the actors, you know what I mean? And, and it worked, I mean, but we were totally like, when we were making it, there were so many moments of doubt, as you do with any really real film. But for this, it was like particularly interesting, because we were like, what the hell are we doing? We were like, it's like you're sitting out there at like 2 a.m, waiting to drop off some supplies, or walking out in the middle of the woods in the middle of the night after pretending to be the Blair Witch. And we kind of look at each other like, what the, either this is going to be like something really cool, or it's going to be like a comedy, because it's going to be like, the filmmakers running around the woods, look at that, they thought it would be scary. But luckily it worked out, and everybody kind of just worked together, and we made this film, and it edited the hell out of it for probably 10 months, and came up with what we showed in the theaters.
It was just so unique, like to have the perspective of the actor holding the camera and doing the camera with themselves and shaking it around, and it was something that we had never seen before, and it was so immersive and real. That's what made it so terrifying. You didn't have all the music and special effects and special lighting, and you're like, oh wow, this is real, and that's what's so terrifying. We have woods over here, and so it's like and then there's a whole, it spawned like a whole new horror genre in itself of like this found
genre.
footage.
Yeah.
I just love it.
I have a question. So I guess maybe it's a 2 or 3-parter. So how hard was it to find actors that could act realistic? And did they also know what they were getting into, coming into the movie? Did they know like how you guys were going to do it?
I mean, they had an idea. I mean, first of all, we auditioned like almost like 1,000 people in LA and Orlando and DC. And really New York is kind of like, it's just the fertile ground for like this kind of acting, you know what I mean? And we decided early on that we're like, we're going to go with a combination. We definitely wanted like 2 guys and a girl, but we would have probably been open if we had found like 2 really great, it was just kind of a matter of like finding the best actors that kind of played against each other, the best. And we lucked out, and we found Mike and Heather and Josh, and it was difficult because you had to, even the auditioning process was kind of unique. We would basically, we kind of had a sheet of paper that we would we would pass around to people waiting in the, as they filled out their information, waiting for the audition, basically saying, look, this is a movie that's you're going to be out in the woods for probably 10 days. And if you don't like camping, do not audition. You're probably not going to be able to shower. And, we kind of, warning these people that this is not going to be like trailer, like going to your trailer after that, a hard day on the set, or, in between takes. So for us, so a lot of people, mostly people stayed. I'm sure some people left, but they were, and also we told them that once they got into the room, just get ready the audition starts as soon as they open the door. So instead of like having hey, how you doing, shaking hands and stuff, we had them sit down, and we immediately went into like this fake scenario of like that they were like a prisoner, at a parole board hearing, and so they would come in, and we'd be like, whatever it was, Josh Leonard, you come here, after serving 5 years of a 12-year sentence, and come in front of this parole, but kind of setting it up, the parole board, and we wanted to give you an opportunity to tell us, how you felt about your, incarceration and all that, rehabilitation, and we just let them go, and obviously the really good ones would like immediately get into it and immediately kind of, we'd ask them questions, follow-up questions. Some people were like, kind of looking around like, is this the right, what the hell what am I doing, and then we would switch up. We'd be like immediately going to like, oh, congratulations, Mr. Leonard, you've just, scored a perfect 10 on that vault or whatever. How do you, or that dive, how do you feel? And they'd be like, oh, I felt great. You have to make it up. So, we kind of weeded people out, based on, just ability and kind of just style, like, and we kind of started grouping them together, and doing callbacks. And basically we would just we would just do combinations of 3 actors, and we'd put them through scenarios. And I think that was, for Mike, Josh, and Heather, going through that process gave them, clues as to what we were planning, because we were playing around with some of the scenes. Like I remember one of the scenes was, we would, we did the scene when Josh is calling out to them in the woods, from the woods, and so we would have like the one of the males and one of the female actors, and another actor yelling. I don't know if we played the other, but basically just get their reactions to how, their interactions while their friend is calling out for help. You know what I mean? So that was a scene that they kind of figured, okay, I think there's something like this is going to happen in the movie, but we never showed them the script. Once they came to Maryland, we basically put them up in a hotel, and we gave them like a little mini film school, like how to load the cameras, and how to tell when the batteries are charged, and just the kind of the logistical kind of information, and also a little bit about because we had a 16mm camera, like Heather was supposedly shooting her documentary on on a CP16, which is like 16mm film. So Josh had to know how to load the film. the camera and, and focus it and all that and properly expose it. So Neil Fredericks, our DP, kind of took everybody through a mini film school. We taught Mike how to, run the audio equipment. And Heather, we just gave her, we wrote up a bunch of like the mythology of Blair Witch as best we knew, like just kind of an information dump of like what's going on and there's been going on in these woods. And then she was the only one we gave this information to. The other two didn't know anything about the Blair Witch. So, we just kind of set them up, and then we also kind of let them, we were like, we'd love to use your real names, and we'd love to use as much of your own kind of experience, in the character as you want. You know what I mean? Bring about, whatever, just to, so there's not this level of like trying to remember the person's character. You're literally just there's more it's a little more personal, you know what I mean? And they were cool with it, and really, man, I mean, the three actors, like I know people like, they could really never get enough accolades as far as like I'm concerned. Like they really made that movie, and we lucked out. We lucked out when we got those actors, and they were willing to do everything that we asked them to do. And so that's kind of like a long-winded explanation, kind of just kind of a rundown of how we did it. But again, it was like a lot of it was a lot of favors being called in, and most of the people, we were all friends, and it was a very small crew, and we all did everything. And so that was we crazy glued this production together.
That's pretty amazing that you were able to find such great actors that people don't recognize and know. So then when you put them on like the wanted posters, people are like, oh, this is real. And it was like, and it caused people to actually think they were missing people. Like
and I want to say like what she said, like did such a good job at casting. And I've seen like lots of found footage movies, after this, and like not everyone can do such a realistic job. So you guys did really luck out. Like they were excellent.
Did you get
No, I mean, it was like key, like for us, that was, like Blair Witch was like everything that was negative about an indie film was a positive for us. Like an indie film, like you can't afford to have like known actors, because you can't afford to pay them. For our film, it's like we couldn't have had known actors. They had to be completely unknown. I mean, it's like other movies spend millions of dollars on lighting the woods. Like, well, we couldn't light the woods like that. We were trying to be realistic. So the casting was definitely something. I mean, obviously it wouldn't have worked with somebody that audiences knew of, and also the internet was like just small enough, but yet large enough to like spread disinformation, but it didn't have a Facebook. You couldn't check up on Heather Donahue or Mike Williams or Josh Leonard. You couldn't look up their Facebook page, and so but there, so it was, it was a fun time, and it was a good, the internet was like a kind of the wild west at that time, and we took advantage of it for sure.
Did you get in trouble at all for your missing person marketing stunt?
No, you know what? I mean, that was, we didn't get in trouble for anything. I mean, the most we got in trouble was like, I mean, and that was kind of one of the things, like when we were about to enter Sundance, we had this big kind of discussion as far as like, what do we tell people? Do we enter as a documentary, or do we enter as a narrative, as a feature film, as a piece of fiction? And we never thought we were going to enter as a documentary, and that was like a big thing for us. Like how much lying? I mean, the movie is a lie, but every movie is a lie. I mean, obviously, you have to suspend your there's no such place as the Star Wars world. You know what I mean? Those are all actors, and we all know that. But lying on this level of saying, no, this could be real footage. This is, the whole movie was kind of based on that. So we always like went back and forth as far as like how how much do we lie? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
what
And
kind of boundary do you want to push, you know?
yeah, and we all you know, we didn't want the audience to come back and like really hate us and be like, oh my God, they lied to us or whatever. So we went in kind of saying, yeah, it's real, but it's no, of course it's not real. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, we never, but then Artisan, like the company that bought the movie, they were like, no, we're gonna play it as real. And we were like, can you do that? You know, kind of the same question you had is like, can you do that? Like, is that allowed? And they're like, oh yeah, it's completely allowed. I mean, you know, who's gonna enforce that? You know what I mean? So for us, it was just you know, it was just a lot of like, again, like kind of like, I hope we don't get in trouble, but no, we never got in trouble for really anything. I mean, the only, you know, we did get a lot of people like calling and asking about I can't find any information on these missing filmmakers, and you know, what can you give me? And it's like, well, no, dude, it's not real. That's why you can't find any more information on it. So we did get a lot of that stuff, and but it wasn't legally, I mean, I don't know how, but we didn't get into any trouble.
Very nice. Yeah, I love that part. I was just like, oh man, because you have to find someone who's so good, but like you don't know who they are. And then I think the time period, the 90s, was like, that's when you could get away with it. Because like you said, Facebook and stuff, you just can't make anything that good anymore and make it believable, you know? So
yeah. But I mean, New York City, though, New York in general is still, it's, I mean, you can find some amazing talent there that hasn't done anything. That was kind of our thing, is like, we were looking for non-union talent because we couldn't have done this as a union shoot, obviously. There would have been a lot of meal penalties incurred. But New York is still, I mean, like my other film, Lovely Molly, I kind of went on the same approach where I want to find somebody completely unknown. And I found Gretchen Lodge, who's like amazing. So there's, and so there's kind of something, it was really exciting about being that kind of thing where like you can go down and like just discover somebody, because there's so much talent out there, so you never know what, somebody's going to come out of nowhere and just blow your brains out,
I think the other thing that's cool about this is that, like she said, it revolutionized like, subgenre, but it like opened the door for filmmakers that don't have like huge budgets to. Everyone's like, wow, we can actually make something cool with no money, so I think people got lots of ideas off that.
More inspiration. Cool. Yeah. Did you think this film would have such an enormous success? You mentioned a financial struggle, had around $60,000 for budget, and then the film went on to make almost $250 million and inspire a whole new genre, and then sequels and a video game now. So did you ever think that it would lead to all of that?
No, absolutely not. I mean, we definitely had, I mean, it's you always dream, and like you were talking about us inspiring, filmmakers, like, we were inspired. I was inspired by, for obviously, Lucas and Spielberg, at a much, obviously kind of not independent way, but kind of in a studio, they had money, they were successful filmmakers. But, when I was trying to become a filmmaker, Spike Lee and Steven Soderbergh and Kevin Smith and Robert Rodriguez, like all these guys, kind of showed that you didn't need that, huge resources. You didn't need the Hollywood resources, so it's great for me to hear that, that when that's kind of the biggest thing that I'm proud of, is the most proud thing that I am of Blair Witch, is when people come to me and say, oh, you guys taught me that, you could, anybody can do it. If you guys could do it, anybody could do it. I'm like, yeah, exactly. But no, I didn't. I mean, I knew we had, there was certain levels of like, when we would pitch this movie to people, there was kind of a different interest to the, to people, like people really loved the idea. It was like something that really clicked with people. But it was, we kind of started slowly seeing these signs of like what it was, eventually going to turn out to be. But no, I don't think we never planned that it was going to be this huge thing. Like, again, our big thing was that, we would get, some kind of distribution deal and some, get a little bit of money so that we could pay people back and maybe pay ourselves a little bit. But other than that, there was, very, low expectations, because we had all, I was in my late 20s, and, the other guys we're all kind of the same age. There's some guys older than me that, we had all been through disappointments before. We had all gotten our, hearts broken by films that we thought were going to be, the next big thing. So, but, it was definitely, we had a unique film, we knew we had really something unique, and we hoped that was going to be enough,
Yeah, enough to spawn just like a cult gathering
Revolution.
sequels. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of like the right place at the right time, and we had a lot of luck, and it was, all the planets aligned for Blair Witch. And I think that it was just a little, it was this little spark that kind of ignited a lot of, again, like we were talking about, like it just kind of inspired people to say, hey, if those guys did it, I could do it. And it kind of just, brought about again, like this idea of, and horror films have always been kind of cheap to make, what I mean? Like that's kind of part of their appeal, is like, there's always been like super low budget horror movies, you know what I mean? And, but I think Blair Witch made it like, man, all you need is a camera, really. You don't just go into the woods. And that's why there were so many parodies, and, there was people had a lot of fun with this idea, but a lot of really great films came out of like this, basic idea, you know what I mean? And it wasn't something that we invented, like I always tell people, like, they're like, well, what were you inspired by? And, as far as before that, and I always say, well, I mean, really, like, what the movie that really opened my eyes to what this could be was Spinal Tap. You know what I mean? Because it was a fake documentary. Like, I was like, and I know there has been other movies, but to me, Spinal Tap was, obviously one of my favorite movies, and very entertaining and funny. But I was also like, man, it's somehow it works. Like, I know it's, Billy Crystal, and I know, Christopher Guest, and, all these people that I know are actors. It's Rob Reiner, what I mean? I know these people, but it somehow worked, what I'm saying? So to me, that really opened up the idea of all the mock documentary, you know what I mean? And also, and then later on, Dan and I kind of, connected the dots to, oh, can you do that in the horror world? And we connected this, some stuff that did it in the late 70s, like that show In Search Of, which was kind of a fake documentary about the paranormal stuff, which was really creepy and like a huge inspiration for us. But, I was really happy when people kind of took this kind of formula that we didn't invent, but we kind of popularized and kind of went out there and did their own thing. I thought, every time there's another found footage movie, whether people are inspired by Blair Witch or not, I'm like, that's cool. People are still people are still finding, cool ways to mix it up and use that power, that we kind of tapped into, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because it feels like a real fear, like it's a psychological, you don't actually see anything that's trying to get you. You don't have like this giant monster, you don't have all this gore. It's just like, it's all in your head, and it's a situation that anyone can be in, and it just makes it so like real, So that's what's scary to me, is something that's real. I know I'm not watching a movie,
Yeah. Well, because it's just like, Blair Witch was like, I tell people, it's like, and a lot of found footage, the really good found footage movies. I mean, obviously you want to show something, like there's a different satisfaction, there's a certain satisfaction of seeing something. And, especially in, if you're doing a monster movie, like for me, it's like, if you're making a monster movie, you got to show the monster at the end. You can tease me all you want, but I want to see the monster. So wait, what was, I completely lost my train of thought. But so what was the question?
I was just saying that it made the fear seem real, because it was
Oh,
like,
yeah. So Blair Witch kind of uses the same technique as like almost like a radio drama, or a book. Books, like most, Stephen King books are scarier than the movies or there's TV shows, because you're inventing the creature in your head, and you're coming up with these really scary things that are scary to you. And I think Blair, well, like if you look at Blair Witch, like, even the actors aren't on camera when they're talking. Like, it's literally shots of just woods a lot of times, so you kind of have to invent stuff in your head. And I think that's always more powerful than anything, us horror filmmakers can come up with, any kind of monster. Like you're always, and I think that's what, good found footage movies do, is they kind of make the audience fill in the blanks, and you're going to hopefully fill it in with, your own kind of scary stuff that scares you. And that's why I think they're effective. They're still effective,
Yeah, that fear of the unknown, especially in Blair Witch, it just like really affects you. Like when they're running and screaming, she's like, "What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that?" It's like, what does it look like?
Yeah. And also like found footage movies, like there's the and this is something you learn early in film school, like in screenwriting, is that like normal conversations are not like movie conversations. You know what I mean? Like people interrupt each other, you say the wrong word, you go down a tangent of a sentence, and you kind of have to back, what I'm saying? Like there isn't, and the quips are not as quippy, your people are, not so written. So found footage, I think, kind of goes back into like, it feels more natural. They're just talking in, incomplete sentences, and they interrupt each other. And sometimes you can hear them clearly, but sometimes you can't, like it. And I think that is what is part of the formula that like makes your brain click into like, hey, this is really happening. And it constantly, even though it's not real, it constantly tricks you into believing it's like the same thing as a documentary. You know what I mean? And I think that's kind of part of the formula that makes this subgenre so effective.
Yeah, like when they were like yelling and screaming at each other and fighting and angry, I was like, oh man, I feel it. I feel angry, So,
Yeah. No, and also the moments of quiet and like no music, like, most films, like, it's just music is always has always been a part of filmmaking, even from the very beginning. So taking that out, like kind of gives you, it definitely leaves like it gives you a weird sense, like a weird, like that you're not watching a movie, you know what I mean? So I think that's part of it too, even though now like all found footage movies now have, soundtracks, which is great. The genre has evolved, and has, that's my favorite thing, is to watch like the new filmmakers kind of tackle original ways to do, found footage. That's really what excites me about, is that people are still, like I said earlier, still doing like really good stuff with it,
But in Blair Witch, you didn't have like that swelling music coming to know that you should be tense.
Yeah, I mean, like your life's not narrated with music, so it's just so close to home.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely.
So I wanted to mention that you transitioned from indie to corporate filmmaking quickly. Do you feel like you had less control or more pressure in the process for like sequel projects?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about, Blair Witch, and I mean, I still get people who like text, like message me, hey, I want to do a Blair Witch, whatever. And, can you, or I want to show Blair Witch, can you give me permission? I'm like, dude, we haven't owned Blair Witch since we signed the deal at Sundance, that's kind of the, the thing that is a little frustrating, is the fact that, you come up with this idea and you come up with these, this premise, and then it's bought away from you. They paid money, and they paid good money. And, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have sold the film or whatever, but that's what happens. You sell the idea, and usually they own all the rights, you know what I mean? So, I mean, I think if we had controlled the rights to Blair Witch, I think, things would have been done a little bit differently. I don't know if we would have been more successful or less successful or whatever, but, Lionsgate still, involves us in stuff, like I was, they're always reaching out to me to help, just market stuff, and I help them market the game, and the I'm kind of, I love to be part of it, you know what I mean? And I, both Dan and Greg, like, the other Blair Witch guys that we did the movie with, we all like, would love to play in the Blair Witch world again, what I'm saying, like in any capacity. So we've pitched TV ideas, we've pitched multiple sequels and prequel ideas, and it just hasn't worked out. They actually had us write a sequel, years ago, and they paid us, and that was really great. And we did a good script. We came up with a good script, but they never shot, they never greenlit it. So for us, it's kind of like we would love to be part of it, but there's other things. But yeah, absolutely. Once you get into, once people are paying you to make movies or to do TV shows, then, you're an employee. That is one of the most difficult things to kind of figure out. And I always tell people like who are not making any money in the film business, who are filmmakers, I'm like, now is the time to make whatever the hell movie you want to make. Like, don't try to, people are saying, how do you succeed in, how do you make a film or whatever? How do you, become a filmmaker? And it's like, there's a million different ways, but one of the proven ways is just do stuff that Hollywood's not doing. This is your only chance. This is your best opportunity to do something without the financial burdens, that making movies or TV shows for millions of dollars brings on you. It definitely constricts constrains your artistic choices. I love doing television, and I feel that there's like less stress, a little bit less stress, less pressure, as far as like you're not carrying the entire burden of the movie on your shoulders. in TV, there's writers, and you're one of the directors, so you kind of bring in and you kind of help move the train along, but you're not responsible. You know what I mean? And for movies, there's a lot, for at least for me, like my films are kind of my kids, you know what I mean? And it's really painful when people don't like them, and it's really painful making them, because you're always doubting whether the idea is right and whether your instincts are right, and at the end of the day, it's all you got, so you kind of keep moving forward. But yeah, I found that feature filmmaking is a lot more stressful than the television stuff. But saying that, I mean, I'm always looking for stuff I'm always looking to do a feature film, you know what I mean? Like always have multiple film projects in development. I'm pitching multiple things, and there's always kind of in the background, I'm always trying to do that. But I do love where I'm at. I love where I've landed in my career, and I feel really blessed that I'm still making money, knock on wood. I'm still making a living in this business, which is sometimes that's hard to do.
Yeah, I guess that kind of answered my next question. But I mean, you've had like a really good career. It's been like 20 years plus since Blair Witch,
Yeah.
A lot of projects you're doing TV now.
Yeah.
You actually just mentioned it. I was going to ask. So I was IMDb stalking, and it said that you guys had like a Blair Witch TV series, like you just mentioned, you pitched it. Are you guys still working on one? Because we want the scoop before Fangoria again.
Scoop. Yeah, no, I mean, look, I wish I had, Blair Witch news. I wish, but I don't, I mean, look, again, like because right now, Greg, Hale, and I are still partners at Haxon Films. Everybody else is kind of doing their own thing. We're all still friends and very friendly and stuff, but Greg and I are the only ones left of the group. And we've pitched, TV ideas. Anytime there's any kind of opening that people are like, oh, they're interested in hearing, pitch on this, or somebody's interested on anything with Blair Witch, it's like, we feel like, we owe it to ourselves to kind of get in there and say, hey, what about, us or whatever. And it hasn't worked out, but we have so many ideas. We have, some really, cool, which I think would make great TV shows, and also movies. Before, around the Sundance days, when we were like just starting to see that the Blair Witch was gonna, be at least successful enough to have maybe a sequel, we always thought about, what Blair Witch movies do we want to do? So all those ideas are still there, and I'm sure Dan has a ton of ideas. As well, again, like it would be great to play in that, again, in that playground that we created, you know what I mean? But again, it's not up to us, but I think hopefully eventually we'll end up, at least, I mean, because a Blair Witch TV show kind of makes a lot of sense, right? Like it's just,
excellent.
and but they've been, I've heard because we hear little rumors about, hey, they, we pitched them this and this, so they've been looking, um, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if they came and they're, they already had one and they're about to, I don't know, go into production. I guess I would have heard something about it, but nothing surprised me because they are always doing new stuff. Like they have that Blair Witch escape room now in Vegas, which I think is great. So I love the idea that that this thing we created continues to kind of grow and kind of expand, you know what I mean? But I do wish that we were, that we were more of a part of it. But again, it's like, like I said before, I'm pretty happy where I'm at. I can't complain about where I'm at in my, in both personally and professionally. So.
Yeah. I mean, there's a trade-off between if you control everything, now you're responsible for, you have less stability, you know what I mean? And then when you're not indie anymore, now you're corporate, you're like, okay, well now some of the responsibility is shared, and not all of it's on my shoulders. I've got more stability. So it's kind of a trade-off. Like I have, less like voice in all these voices, but at the same time, it's more stable and allowed more things to happen.
Yeah. Well, and also like I'm doing, like right now I'm prepping a short film that hopefully I'll shoot in January here in Maryland. And it's for this feature film anthology that we're doing that I was very blessed to have been invited to be a part of. And and that's like, the short films are kind of a fun way to again kind of do exactly what I want to do and push the boundaries and kind of, again, be your own boss. It's fun. It's a little bit more like film school, these short films that I do every once in a while. And I am able to do that because, I can make a living in the television and, world. And I can, if an opportunity comes around that maybe I'm not going to make as much money, but I can do something cool, I can jump on it, so it's, again, like I feel blessed that I'm here and then, the short film I think is going to be really fun. And again, it kind of takes you a little bit out of the corporate, mentality a little bit for a little, even though you are getting, somebody is your boss, somebody is financing it. There's they're not looking over your shoulder, they're kind of like, just, make the movie and send it to me and we'll put it, whatever. So, it's still fun. It's still fun to do that stuff. And it's great that I'm able to do that every once in a while,
Yeah. So you already mentioned your IMDb stalking. So we'll move past that.
I wouldn't say stalking. I'd say researching.
Researching, yeah.
I mean, that's kind of what IMDb is about, right? It's just,
I got the pro account. You got to use it for something.
Portfolio.
Get a little more detail.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, what is the strangest, funniest, or scariest story that you can tell us from the set of any film that you've been a part of?
Wow.
I know.
Yeah, you have a huge career. Usually we get just like one story.
Yeah.
You're like our biggest guest so far. You've had a ton of stuff, but
man, the scare, one of the scariest things is and it's still scary, is when somebody gets hurt, like when a stuntman gets hurt, or especially one of the actors gets hurt. Like that's like a nightmare, that's what you want to avoid. And it's hasn't happened that often, but sometimes you get into this crazy schedule in television and in the indie world where I'm from, you got to move quickly, and sometimes people make mistakes, or it's the end of the day and you've been moving at 100 miles an hour the whole day, but there's nothing like that. It's just, you feel like because it's you feel responsible. I feel responsible because I'm like, well, I'm the one that made up this thing of being thrown across the room. It's sort of my, I'm the one that's planning this. And so, so that's, it still happens every once in a while. And that's the worst thing, you know what I mean? And then the scariest thing, like, as far as like really feeling scared, was when we were, I don't think we were shooting Blair Witch yet, but we were out at the house that, you know, the end of the movie happens. And we were, you know, we were scouting it, or I don't know what we were doing. It was, you know, before we were started shooting, and we went out there late, and it started getting dark, and we're walking around, and I'm in the basement, and I suddenly realized that I'm alone in the house. Like everybody that I came with.
My worst nightmare, to be in that house alone.
Yes, exactly, at night, man. And so it was, you know, obviously everything turned out right, but it was like, all right, but it was this level of fear. And it's kind of like, you know, and this is before we shot anything in that cellar. And I think that every time I see the end of Blair Witch, I kind of flash back a little bit to that moment where I was in that basement, probably staring at that same corner, and realizing I'm not hearing any footsteps upstairs. Like, I'm not hearing there's nothing, I can't hear anybody talking. And I was like so into whatever the hell I was doing. So I just ran out of there. And it's just like this moment of fear, like when you feel like somebody's like right, you know, right behind you, about like something's about to grab you at any second. So that house really freaked me out. And then again, like when I was editing the Blair Witch at the end, I was editing by myself late at night at the editing in our offices in Orlando. And I was editing that freaking house scene by myself, and it was like 2 a.m, and all of a sudden it just started creeping in on me, like, just like, because you know as a filmmaker, you can usually separate yourself from the footage because you were there, and it's clapboard and all that stuff. But this was just like them screaming and all this and I'm editing all this, and all of a sudden I'm like, I just play it back, and I just remember, like, the hairs on the back of my neck just standing up, and I'm like, I got to get out of here. Like, again, turn off all the computers, lock up, and like run to my car, again feeling like somebody is about to grab me. It's weird that the Blair Witch gave me those moments, and because it is, again, it was even though we made the movie, it was still a really effective movie to us, as far as fear was concerned.
Yeah. So when you weren't actually out there, you sent them out with notes and an outline, and then you came back to your editing later. Did anything really surprise you when you were editing? You're like, oh, I didn't expect that to be there. Oh, I didn't expect them to say that. Or
yeah, I mean, everything was a surprise, because like we had, first of all, what was really surprising was that you look at the Blair Witch script that that we wrote, and we definitely followed, like somehow we ended up following that script pretty closely, again, with the directing actors mostly by notes, directing them but from afar, so it taught me as a director that sometimes the best thing you can do is kind of back away. And I still do it in television all the time, is that people are all professionals. And a lot of times the best stuff you're going to get is just by backing away and letting people do their jobs. You know what I mean? So Blair Witch kind of taught me that sometimes you have to let go. But, it was a crazy, 24-hour-a-day shoot. So there was like no time to kind of, catch up on that. But all the time when we were watching the footage, we were always surprised by, the just certain, the culmination of the scenes, like the scene when when Josh really attacks Heather with the camera, and Heather's like crying, and we instigated that scene, and but we never we hadn't seen it until we played it, and we weren't sitting around the woods watching that scene. So a lot of the movie was very surprising to us, like the map, you guys, the whole kicking the map into the creek thing that you guys started the show with, like that was a complete improv, Mike.
Oh wow,
that's cool.
So we watched the movie, we were watching the footage, and Mike's like, where's the map, and we were watching this thing in the footage, like, wait, they've lost the map. And we were like, what are we going to do about the map? They seem to have lost it. Who the hell? And we were just like, this is, you just let it play out.
Yeah.
And Mike was like, I kicked that map into the creek, and for us, that whole scene was like, we were watching it as an audience member. And I think that was one of the first moments where we were like, man, this could be really effective if we're already being sucked in, and we're the directors of this movie.
That was a happy accident.
I loved that part. I was like, oh.
So were there times
it's great. Yeah, it's great.
Were there times where they were filming a scene and they just did like multiple takes of stuff, like, oh, that sucks, let's go back and keep doing it? Or was it all one?
No, I mean, I think that they might have done stuff like that. I can't remember the footage. There wasn't. The only time we did multiple takes was when we had technical problems.
Okay.
But I don't know. I don't think they did any. I don't think they were like, hey, can we do that again? I don't think they would just continue. So a lot of the editing was a lot of the editing was just condensing the scenes, and finding these little beats in the scene to make a scene. But no, it was, yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, well, so looking back at your career, like you've had a big career, what advice can you give up and coming filmmakers that were in the position that you were in when you made Blair Witch?
I always tell people, like, you don't need film school, but you do need a community, so I think a lot of times, like, I was lucky enough to find, all the guys that I did Blair Witch, the main 5 guys that did Blair Witch were all met in film school. Now we weren't all friends in film school, like we were all different years and whatever, but we all knew of each other. So there was this like level of kind of trust, and kind of, there was something there to, like, bring us together, and that's really powerful, because you can't make a movie by yourself. I mean, I guess these days you can, if you really wanted to, but you learn that collaboration is really what it's about. You know what I mean? You think, I mean, there are a few people, that like are geniuses, and like everything they do is, something about their brain, like just the way they say things or whatever is unique. But most people are mortal, and you need other people, you need other ideas. You know what I'm saying? So learn to, like, build a friendship of filmmakers around you, and obviously don't make it all about yourself, make it about helping them as well, because you never know who's going to be, the next Spike Lee, or who's going to have the good script and then, do an independent, a crazy independent movie or whatever. You never know. And then, and also, find what you're good at, and then don't be afraid to ask people that are better than you to, like, come in and do that job. Like I think a lot of films makers, when they go into film school, everybody wants to be a writer director, and it takes a lot of maturity to realize, I'm a great director but not so much a writer, or I'm not really good, but I'm a great editor. I can somehow put these scenes together in a way, or a cinematography, what I'm saying? So, like, be open to that and say, oh man, I can't write anything, but I'm a pretty good director. I'm going to try to get this person that, wrote this great script that I really love. I'm going to see if they can, write something for me, or I can write something with it, whatever. So, and the same thing, if you're not a great director, but, whatever. So find your niche, like what you're good at, and be the best at that. And if it is that you're a writer director, then form some, again, a team around you that can help you, and just be cool, like, whether it's film or TV, like people are like, what's the number one piece of advice? I'm like, just be cool. Like, don't, not cool, in a hip whatever way, but just cool, where, like, be like, treat people the way you want to be treated. Like, if somebody comes and asks you a question, like, don't belittle them, because they don't know. Like, the same way that if you wanted to ask a question, do you want to be, called out on your ignorance, or, praise people, like, if you're a kind of a team leader in any way, even if you're not, a little bit of praise goes a long way. Like, if it's sincere, you know what I mean? And, don't be afraid to, and I have to deal with this all the time, because the ego still gets in the way, and the ego is always telling you your ideas are the best, you know what I mean? So sometimes, like, even now, like, you come into a scene and for a TV show. And, every scene you're like, as at least for me, I come in with an idea of like how I'm going to do it, like a kind of a basic shot sheet, not really storyboards, because you can't really do storyboards on TV, but, at least an idea of like, okay, I need a 2-shot here, and I'm going to do, this is where I'm going to have the actors or whatever. And a lot of times that doesn't really work out. The actors have another idea of whether they want to stand or where they want to sit or where they want to move, or, the cinematographer comes up with an idea, hey, let's shoot it from this side and we can get this in the background. And just, and be open to like, yeah, that's actually a better idea. You know what I mean? And, that the idea, all the good ideas aren't going to come from you, you know what I'm saying? And, so that's the big thing. And then as far as like, content, like, again, I said it earlier, it's like, just do something that is unique, you know what I mean? Or as unique as you can get it. Like, I think, and it's not like make another Blair Witch, which is like a totally experimental movie, but like, you can do a dramatic film, but do a dramatic film about like a corner of your life that most people don't see, or like, that you haven't seen in movies. Like, don't just do another, slasher short movie or something, I mean, do something, make it a slasher, but do something unique with it, and play with it. Like, be experimental, take chances, you know what I mean? And, if you look at it like, if you look at all like kind of the big, independent movies that kind of started, that kind of made a splash, beyond Hollywood, where it kind of like beyond the indie circle, basically, they're all like really unique kind of like approaches, you know what I mean? So the independent cinema is where, there's a reason why it's independent. It's not only independent because, there's no money, but it's independent, use the independence to your advantage, and do something that you haven't seen, in the movie theater or on TV, you know what I mean? Don't try to emulate, anything that you're seeing, try to come up with your own voice. And again, like, people, not everybody's going to be Spike Lee, you know what I mean? There's just no room for, thousands of Spike Lees to come out of the graduate film schools every year, so, be humble and realize that, you're probably not going to be the next Spike Lee, but you can be your own, happy person doing something in film, like that's not a thing. Like, you work on set and you quickly realize that pretty much everybody is it loves their job. Like, conditions suck. And I know people, that the production companies, producers, definitely studios, or whoever you want to say, definitely abuse the crews. I mean, it's really I've noticed it always, there is a certain abuse to being a filmmaker, you have to put up with that. But everybody on set loves what they're doing, so realize that it's not all writing, directing, it's not all producing. There are like so many great and, artistically viable and creatively fulfilling jobs in the film business, and at all levels. I mean, you rarely see somebody who's like, is disgruntled. I mean, seriously, there's, if you give off positive energy, I'm always surprised by how all the crews are so similar, just people who are like, want to do a good job, and they don't want to get, they just want to be respected. And, so, that's kind of my long-winded, response, but mostly just be cool and try to find a unique, again, a unique aspect of something that about to write about, to write and make movies about,
Well, I think that's the hardest step, right? The first step, that one's hard. Like, find something unique that other people haven't thought of. That's something that not your average person can do, And so, and to understand that, like you mentioned, the A-team, right? So you're like, find other people. That's what a good leader does. A good leader knows what they're strong at, and then they know what their weaknesses are and who does it well, and build their team off that. Not being like, well, I need to improve this part of myself, or I need to do it all myself. They understand that someone else does it better, and they bring them in, and they have just as much passion. You've got your A-team, and you're like, that's what makes it successful. That's what a great leader is. People don't want a boss, they want a leader.
Yeah. Well, and also, and you know, and like a good example is my partner Greg Hale. You know, when we met in film school, he was, you know, he's a really great filmmaker. He's a really great director. Like his films were some of the best films of my time there. I mean, really. But Dan and I were already writer directors. He knew that we didn't need a third director, but he was like, I'll produce. You know what I'm saying? So he took kind of a back seat a little bit to us and really ended up kind of being a third director, but you know, like I've said before with Blair Witch. But you know, be willing to do that, you know, like saying if you find an idea, like again, if you can't come up with that cool, if you're like, oh my God, I can't come up with anything that's inspired me, but you read somebody's script and you're like, holy crap, because that's what Greg did with us. Like as soon as, you know, Dan pitched him Blair Witch, he's like, I'm in, you know what I mean? So if you get inspired by that, you know, be cool and like find where, you know, you can, what part of the team needs filling and try to fill that in, you know what I mean? Because you never know, you know what I'm saying? And it, you know, it just helps to kind of, again, people say it all the time, it's all about who you know, but it really is all about who you know. You know, and if you can connect to the right people and you can kind of form a good team, you know, who knows, you might be able to make, you know, the next Blair Witch.
With your own unique twist.
Yeah, and look, what I say about unique thing is that it doesn't have to be like, oh, we're gonna throw people out, you know, like us, like, oh, we're gonna throw actors into the woods and have them film it themselves. Like, it doesn't have to be like that crazy. It can just be like, you know, I've never seen, again, like a science fiction version of this, or like the civil, imagine if like Twilight Zone is a really good example, like that show, like just take something that you've seen a million times, but do it differently, you know, like a lot of the shows are like, you know, a lot of the Shakespeare stories, but like set in the, you know, in the inner city, you know, like West Side Story, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like, again, try to find cool things, period, you know, like a science fiction movie that, you know, time travel, just kind of go crazy, you know what I mean? You know, so, you know, don't be afraid of that stuff, you know, of going somewhere where that nobody has done anything in, you know, there's plenty of stuff left to do out there, you know.
I have a question that I forgot to ask earlier. This one's like a personal question for you. Have you taken your family camping?
Oh, yeah, I'm like, yeah. Yes, yeah, my wife loves camping, and I mean, on it, obviously nowadays we go to like a campsite and it feels pretty safe, but there's still very Blair Witchy moments for me out there in the woods. And Blair Witch really for me was like born out of you know, we used to go down here on the Appalachian Trail, and we would just walk down the trail and then find, you know, go into the middle of the woods and camp. And I mean, you guys know, like camping in the real middle of the woods where there's nobody around you, that's like one of the scariest things. Even if you're with like 10 people, at night you start hearing things and your imagination again, it starts kind of going, and that's where really Blair Witch was born. So we actually do go camping, but now it's like not even tent camping. Like we find there's like little cabins out near where we live that you can rent. But still, you know, the woods for me are always going to be scary. You know what I mean? Like there's always something scary about being in you know, out of your element. So it's funny. Yeah, my family actually does love camping, honestly.
Did you ever like play any tricks on them or tease them while you were out there?
No.
Keep like rocks outside your tent, you know?
You know what? Like, I'm not really that like, I'm not really that kind of scaring people, you know, in person thing. I've never really gotten into that because I start creeping myself out. You know what I mean? Because like the idea, like this, like, you know, like waiting in the woods for somebody to come by or whatever. Like for me, it's like, okay, I have to now be in the woods, or I have to be behind this door to, you know, but no, I just don't. No, I mean, I just don't play with that with fear like that. You know what I mean? Like, no, I don't enjoy that, whether it's scaring people or being scared.
Yeah, I'm the opposite. I definitely would tease the kids.
I definitely would have made a bunch of these and left rocks outside their tent. And be like, I don't know, kids.
Yeah, what's going on, you know?
Stop.
Yeah, well, and also the problem is that, you know, like nobody, yeah, like you know, I couldn't show Blair Witch to my kids until they were a little older. So, and also, like, I just hate, like my mom, when I was young, like, really, like, would use fear as a tool, you know, to like kind of, you know, as a parenting tool. And I've shied away from that completely with my kids. Like, like one time my mom was here and she was like, my son wouldn't go to sleep. You know, he was like 6 or 7. He didn't want to go to sleep. And she was like, tell him that, you know, the pata negra with the black leg, the black foot, is going to get him. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to tell him that the black foot is going to get, I mean, he sleeps by himself. I don't want to, like, why would I do that to my kid, you know? So no, I've totally shied away from like that kind of putting any kind of fear into, you know, kids. Now, you know, I have 2, you know, I have an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old now. I mean, I'll scare them a little bit, but no, I mean, it's just, I as a kid, I guess it scarred me enough and it left me kind of, you know,
Well, that's like
you know
psychological
what I mean?
scarring. I mean, like more in like a playful way, you know.
Oh, yeah, it's coming to get you.
I mean, like when we went out on a little paddle boat with our son, we were like, okay, well, you know, stay in the boat because of the sharks. Obviously, there's no sharks. But then when we hit a twig and he started crying, I was like, oh, I guess that really scared him.
Yeah, that's the thing. We have a lot of power, but yeah, oh no, absolutely. And that's happened to me where it's kind of like, oh, I better be careful with what I say. And also, like, even when you're not talking to them, they're listening. You know, there's a lot of stuff where they like, well, you said that one time. I'm like, what? You were listening to me? So yeah, you got to be really careful. But yeah, it's yeah. I mean, I bust my kids, you know, in other ways. You know what I mean? But sometimes it's, you know, like I do this like this kind of zombie face. I just kind of start like not chasing, but just slowly approaching them, and I continue, and they're like, "Dad, stop!" And I continue, and you know, so there's stuff like that, but you know, it's all, you know, obviously just for fun.
Yeah. We learn as we go. We're like, oh, okay, well, I didn't realize it was being that scary because he likes sharks, so I didn't realize that it was so. I was like, oh no, I didn't mean to scare you. There's no sharks. I'm sorry, you know, but it's too late at that point.
Yeah. And then really, like, parenting is that's just the balance of parenting. Like, how much reality do you want to slowly let your kids, you know, feel a taste of reality, which is, you know, sometimes it's pain and sometimes it's fear. And that's the balancing act of being a good parent, I guess. Right.
Mm-hmm. Parenting in itself could be its own horror genre.
Oh my God.
Or like, what do you allow your kids to watch? Like my parents, I grew up in the 80s. I saw so many movies. Now looking back, I'm like, they let me watch like Jaws and Dark Crystal, all these crazy movies. I'm like, those scarred me, gave me nightmares.
Like Exorcist, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like because you know, it was just different back then, man. Like when I watched The Exorcist, and I've told the story a million times, it's like it was like a documentary. Like we watched it as a family. Like it was like, hey, The Exorcist is going to be on TV. It was the first time it had been on TV. It's like late 70s, and we're going to sit around. We're going to watch this. Like it's going to be like like a lesson. And basically, because, you know, my mom was very Christian, and she was like, you know, and then the whole thing about Christianity, man, is if you believe in Jesus, you got to believe in Satan too, man, because you know he's right there. So the idea that like Satan is real, and then my mom was like, well, you know, this is, if you mess with Satan, this is what can happen to you. So, and, you know, and that's not even the worst thing my mom would do to me, man. I mean, I haven't really talked about, you know, I mean, it was never like, you know, physical, but my mom's definitely like liked to mess with me. And that's like one of the big things of why I've shied away from it for my kids, but she definitely messed with me in a bunch of different ways as a kid, in a weird, loving way, but very, very strange. My upbringing, for sure.
My dad had the same experience with that movie. He went with his church group as a child, and they're like, you have to watch this as an educational
Yeah.
You know, you need the knowledge that this can happen. And he was like, what, like 10, you know, going with the church group to this. And then, he said he didn't sleep for days. And I was just like,
Well,
it was a whole different thing in this. Yeah.
well, especially the theatrical version of The Exorcist, because like the TV version, is not quite as shocking. You know what I mean? Like I remember when I first saw the theater version, I was like, holy crap. Like, I'm glad I didn't see that when I was, 10 years old or 11 years old or whatever. But yeah, it's crazy how times, and even like, the movies that we grew up with, like the Goonies and Poltergeist, like there's so many cringy, like, whoa, kind of cringy moments that you're like, just real quick, like I was watching, I discovered like Saturday Night Live on Peacock has all the Saturday Night Lives, like, and I watched one with like, Billy Crystal was a guest host, and he comes out as like Sammy Davis Jr., like in blackface, and it's like, it's funny, he's a great impression, but it's like the whole time you're like, this is just, but it was totally acceptable back then. Now you can't get, you can't get away with it, but so there's so many moments like that like that we didn't have any guardrails back then, you know what I mean? It was, it's amazing we didn't all come out, completely as psychos, the stuff that we watched,
Maybe we did, we're just covering it up really.
Well, psychos don't know they're psychos. So.
Well, I've noticed with kids, you gotta be careful with these streaming.
So how do you do with your kids now? Like what, like,
okay, well, first of all, we learned the hard way that streaming PG movies doesn't necessarily mean they're PG if they were made like 40 years ago, because they didn't have so like they'll be like, oh, family classics, and it brings on their Indiana Jones, and and it's got like someone's face melting, and like, what? No, turn that off.
Not PG-13 really anymore.
No, it was PG back then, and so you got to be really careful with because Netflix and Amazon, they'll just group all the PG stuff together as being a family movie, but movies from the 80s that had a PG rating, they're still not.
Well, there's this one time we put on.
It's like Cinderella.
Yeah, Cinderella is set, right? So we're letting our daughter watch Cinderella, and then there was this moment in the movie where it was like that video game Mortal Kombat, where the queen's just like rips some dude's head off and the spine comes out. We're like, the whole movie up to that point was a kid's movie. We're like, what just happened? Our daughter's like,
you gotta like pre-screen all the movies ahead of time, which is really hard to do because you don't have time to begin with, so.
Yeah. I mean, my kids grew up like, streaming came in like halfway through, but I started them just watching DVDs, and there's like Time Bandits and a lot of the movies that I loved as a kid. Is like, all those 70s and 80s movies, man, have something in there, again, like the face melting and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then the Temple of Doom, where he rips that guy's heart, and burns in his hand. So I probably showed my kids a lot of stuff that they shouldn't have seen, but so far, luckily they all turned out all right. So hopefully I did a good job. But you can never be perfect. And again, the shit we saw when we were kids, and we turned out half normal. So
yeah. My mom still plays it safe. She just only watches animated. She'll just play it safe.
but again, like you were saying, even the animated stuff, like especially. Is like, what the hell is that? And even like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, you're like, what the hell is this teaching? What kind of lesson is this? That, oh, now your red nose is works for us, so we're gonna accept you. It's like, it's just so cruel. It's like, what kind of lessons are we teaching our kids with this Christmas song? But anyway.
And now I'm going down the rabbit hole.
Part.
Going down the rabbit hole with your 7-year-old daughter and reading her old Disney books and being like, well, this book's gonna disappear. Like the Snow White one, we're like, she was so beautiful and wanted the prince, and I'm like, nope, that one's gonna disappear. I'm like, you're more than just a prince's muse, you don't have to worry about being the fairest in the land. I'm like, where'd my Snow White book go? I don't know. You know, it's not, then you start to go down the rabbit hole of what's that putting in their mind early on, you know. And,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's and I, when as a really early parent, you're always, you're scared about everything I see, and I think, as you get more experience, you realize that they're pretty resilient, and obviously you have to take care of them and watch over them as much as you can. But a lot of it, like we said before, is just like it's pain. You got to let them kind of be confused and figure things on their own, and experience a little bit of fear, and that's life, so you're basically, we're just training humans, you know what I mean? So you gotta show them the good and the bad. It's just a matter of when you do that, and to what extent. Like my mom went a little far as like the fear thing for whatever reason, but otherwise, there's a lot of other things that she taught me that were great lessons, and she was I had a great childhood, but everybody makes mistakes, obviously.
Yeah, and then your leadership principles, they all come back to you as a parent. You're like, okay, well, this is the part that I'm not good at. This is someone else. Like, go ask your mother. Go ask your father. Like, they know more about this sort of thing.
Yeah, you got to.
So where can we keep up on your projects, current, future projects, social media sites and things like that?
I mean, I'm sort of active, like on the best way is probably Hacks and Films on Facebook, which is HAXAN Films, and that's mostly what I keep up with, all the kind of the business stuff. And then my Facebook is, you can follow me, but it's more for personal stuff. I don't have too many friends on there. And then Twitter, I'm Sanchez on the mic. And again, I try to do as much social media as I can, but mostly I'm just looking for news and stuff on there. I don't really post as much as really I should, but especially if something cool is happening, like on this short film, like I'll start putting some things up because we're shooting it locally and we want to cast locally and all that stuff. So but yeah, Hacks and Films on Facebook is probably the best place. We put everything up on there. So
cool. Yeah, you should get yourself a social media manager so that we can get that TV show, get some oomph behind the TV show, because I want to watch it. So
yeah, I know. Yeah, there's it's, you only have a certain amount of time, you know what I mean, and you like start realizing what's important, and you have to prioritize. So but again, I feel very fortunate where I'm at, and I like social media, but it also can be a major waste of time. So
yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's why he does it all. Like,
I wouldn't say a waste of time. It's very tedious.
Yeah.
Spend all day on there doing stuff.
That's why I make whole professions just for that, because it's a full-time job in itself.
It is. No, it absolutely, and it's an art. You have to like figure it out, and it changes all the time, and so it's definitely skill.
All right. Well, Mr. Sanchez, thank you so much for giving us this interview. We really, really, really appreciate it. And have a great Thanksgiving too. We really appreciate that you're doing this before Thanksgiving. So
no problem. Glad I could squeeze it in. Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun. Have a good Thanksgiving, and invite me back whenever.
Cool. Oh, I'll take you up on that. Sure.
All right. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Thank you, and have a wonderful twilight.